Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between the great baobab forest and the roaring river, there lived a merchant named Mwangi. Mwangi was known across the land not for his honesty, but for his shrewdness. He sold everything under the sun: fabrics, spices, tools, livestock. But his goods were never as good as he claimed. Mwangi had a smooth tongue and could sell anything to anyone, no matter how bad the quality. One year, the rains were late, and the harvest was poor. People had little to trade, and Mwangi's business was suffering. Desperate to make a quick profit, Mwangi hatched a plan. He decided to sell the worst of his goods: spoiled grain, torn clothes, broken tools, as if they were fresh and brand new. He knew the villagers were too trusting, and with his silver tongue, he could convince them that they were getting the best deal. Mwangi traveled to the nearby villages, setting up stalls and selling rotten goods. In one village, he sold spoiled grain to a widow, claiming it was the finest millet from distant lands. In another, he sold a cracked pot to an old man, promising it would never leak. Everywhere he went, Mwangi left behind angry customers who soon realized they had been cheated. But Mwangi didn't care. He was getting richer with each village he visited.
Fools, he thought to himself. I am too smart for them. One day, as Mwangi was packing up to leave yet another village, an old man approached him. His hair was white as snow, and his eyes gleamed with wisdom. He wore simple robes, but there was something regal in his bearing. The old man said in a calm voice, "I have seen you travel from village to village, selling your bad wares. I warn you, deceit has a way of catching up with you." Mwangi laughed. "Old man, you may have lived long, but you know nothing of business. I am the best merchant in all the land. No one can outsmart me." The old man simply smiled. "There are things in this world you do not understand. Beware the curse of greed."
Mwangi waved him off and continued on his way. Several months passed, and Mwangi's reputation had spread far and wide. But instead of being known as a great merchant, rumors began to circulate about his dishonest dealings. People from villages he had tricked began warning others, and soon fewer people were willing to buy from him. Still, Mwangi was determined to make even more money. One day, while traveling through a thick forest, he stumbled upon an abandoned hut. Inside, he found old sacks of grain, clay pots, and rusty tools. The items looked as though they had been left there for years. Mwangi, thinking he had found free goods, quickly loaded them onto his cart. "These will fetch a good price," he thought with a grin. But what Mwangi didn't know was that the hut belonged to an old sorceress who had left the items cursed. Whoever tried to sell them would face terrible consequences. Mwangi arrived at the next village, eager to sell the goods he had found. He set up his stall and began calling out to the villagers. His first customer was a young woman looking to buy grain for her family. She handed Mwangi a few coins, and he gave her a sack of grain from the cursed hut. Later that day, the woman returned, furious. "You sold me rotten grain! It smells foul, and when I cooked it, it turned to dust in the pot." Mwangi was surprised. He had inspected the grain himself, and it seemed fine when he sold it. He tried to deny it, but the woman insisted. Eventually, he gave her back her money, grumbling to himself. That night, Mwangi's cart was raided by wild animals. The ropes he had tied to protect his goods had mysteriously snapped, and all the remaining grain had been eaten or scattered by the wind. The next day, Mwangi sold a pot to an elderly couple. He promised them it was strong and would last for years, but when they filled it with water, the pot cracked in two, spilling the water all over their floor. By now, more villagers were beginning to talk about Mwangi's bad goods. Some even whispered that his items were cursed. Mwangi became defensive, trying to sell even faster, but things only got worse. One by one, the items he sold fell apart, rotted, or brought bad luck to those who bought them. One man who bought a rusted machete from Mwangi cut his hand on it the moment he tried to use it. Another woman who bought cloth from Mwangi found it full of holes by the time she got home. The villagers became angry. They gathered outside Mwangi's stall, demanding their money back, but Mwangi had already spent much of it and couldn't repay them. Desperate, he packed up his things and fled the village. As Mwangi made his way back through the forest, a terrible storm hit. Thunder boomed and lightning flashed across the sky. Mwangi hurried toward the river, hoping to cross it before the waters rose. But when he arrived at the riverbank, he found that the river had swollen from the rain, and the bridge had been washed away. Mwangi sat down, frustrated and exhausted. Just then, he heard a soft voice. He looked around and saw a figure emerging from the water. It was the spirit of the river, with flowing blue robes and a crown of reeds on her head. "Mwangi," she said, "you have angered the people of the land with your greed. The goods you took from the sorceress's hut were cursed, but your own actions brought this upon you. Now, you must choose. Will you continue down this path of deceit, or will you change your ways?" Mwangi was speechless. He had never believed in spirits or magic, but here was proof before his eyes. He fell to his knees and begged for mercy.
"I will change," he cried. "I will never sell bad goods again." The river spirit looked at him with pity. "Very well. I will give you one chance to redeem yourself. Go back to the villages you have wronged. Repay them, not with money, but with honesty and hard work. Only then will the curse be lifted." Mwangi returned to the villages, one by one. He worked tirelessly, helping farmers in their fields, mending broken tools, and teaching others the value of fair trade. Slowly, the villagers began to forgive him, and as they did, the cursed goods he still carried disappeared, turning to dust in his hands. Years passed, and Mwangi became known not as a greedy merchant, but as an honest one. He no longer sought to cheat people, but instead helped them find the best deals. His business thrived, not through deceit, but through trust. And so, Mwangi learned the greatest lesson of all. In the end, greed only leads to ruin, but honesty brings lasting wealth. If you like the story, please kindly like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more stories like this. And thanks for watching.